Thank you for joining today's session. We will be getting started shortly. We do have a lot of folks signed up for today's session, and we want to give everyone a moment to log on and get connected so that we can dive into today's session. I do want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm Jasmine Garrett here with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Today's session is an informational overview on the Reducing Emissions Through Retrofits, Optimization, Fuel Switching, and Innovative Technologies Grant Program, also known as RETROFIT in NJ. A quick housekeeping note, we do suspect that many questions will be answered in today's presentation. However, you are able to write in questions at any point during the presentation using Zoom's Q&A feature. It is one of your Zoom command options and will allow us to make sure we are able to get back to you and let others see these questions and answers as well. Today's session is being recorded and will also be posted on our NJEDA and YouTube pages. The slides and other resources will also be available in the next few days. Now, to get us started with the presentation, I will shift things over to NJEDA's Product Officer of Clean Energy, Andy Garcia. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Jasmine said, my name is Andy Garcia. I'm a product officer here with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, and I'm here to give you an overview of the Reducing Emissions Through Retrofits, Optimization, Fuel Switching, and Innovative Technology Grant Program. Just to give you a little bit of overview about the EGA in general, we are New Jersey's premier economic development authority. We cover everything from clean energy to job creation and any economic development within the state. Brief overview of the program. It is a grant program for multi-pronged building retrofit projects that enable holistic energy improvements and significant emission reductions. There is $75 million available. Of those $75 million, half of those funds, $37.5 million, are set aside for institutional entities or projects located in overburdened or adjacent communities for the first calendar year, or for the first year from application launch. This program supports design, engineering, construction, and equipment purchase, as well as installation for building systems that reduce energy use or emissions. So this does cover both hard and soft costs. Applications will be opening next week on the 15th at 10 a.m. They are on a first-come, first-served basis. In order for your building to be eligible, you do have to meet one of the following criteria. As far as building class, you need to be either commercial property, industrial property, an apartment building of 5 or larger units, a public school, public property, churches, cemeteries, graveyards, and other tax-exempt properties. In addition, the funding can be used to support multiple building situations. This is what we would consider a campus, so that would be 2 or more properties that are either on the same lot or adjacent lots. And once you establish that campus, any properties that are owned by the same entity within 1/4 mile. In order to be eligible as the applicant, you must be a commercial, industrial, or institutional building owner or equivalent tenant. The tenant must demonstrate that you have the owner's approval, and there is a form online that you can have your landlord fill out, and that your current lease will extend at least 1 year past the project's expected completion date. Institutional buildings are those defined as serving nonprofit or public purposes, such as libraries, hospitals, public schools, institutions of higher education, municipal utilities, or public recreation and cultural facilities, as well as government entities. Multiple building owners and tenants can submit one application as a consortium. You would need to have one lead entity if you have multiple properties that are owned by different entities. And you would have to be in substantial good standing with the New Jersey Department of Labor, as well as the Environmental Protection, and have a current tax clearance certificate from the Department of Treasury. In order for your project to be eligible, you have to fulfill 3 of the following scopes within your project. Those are on-site renewables, on-site energy storage, heating electrification, refrigerant replacement, or energy efficiency. Alternatively, thermal energy networks are also fundable as a separate category. You do not have to meet those 3 criteria for thermal energy networks. Projects do have to have a minimum cost of $5 million, and construction cannot have been started on the project. You are required to meet labor and compliance criteria, including affirmative wage and a prevailing wage and affirmative action, as well as contractor registration with the Department of Labor. And every project must show that for every $250 in grant funding, that there'll be 1 metric ton of greenhouse gas reduction over the course of the project's useful life. In addition to the above, you can include EV charging infrastructure on any of these projects. It does not count as a qualifying criteria. However, it does count towards the minimum project cost, which we'll go into. Funds can be used, again, for both generally soft and hard costs. That includes construction labor and equipment provided by public work registered contractors that directly relate to the emissions reduction and energy efficiency improvement, as well as enabling work. Enabling work can be, reinforcing a roof for solar, installing a new roof for solar, electric panel upgrades, so anything like that would also be included. Equipment and material procured directly by the applicant are also eligible, as long as they're related to emissions reduction and energy efficiency or enabling work. And then related soft costs, including commissioning, engineering, design, and costs incurred during, are included, and that includes an 18-month look-back period. Soft costs are capped at 20% of the total eligible project costs. Again, electric vehicle charging can be included in any of these projects, but does not count as a qualifying scope criteria. Funds cannot be used for the following purposes. That includes permitting, inspection fees, taxes, acquiring properties, any non-permanent fixtures, so furniture, interior finishes are not eligible. Other building system upgrades not related to the energy efficiency, but that would be required for overall general building compliance, are not included. Prior construction work that has been started or completed prior to the application submission would not be eligible. New construction and gut rehabilitation projects are not included. Basically, if you have to meet new building code for the work you're doing, new energy efficiency code, the project would not be eligible. There is one exception to that rule, and that would be if you have a campus setup where you have two or a few buildings, and there is a shared energy system that's going to be used with those systems, and then also tie into the new building. That shared energy system would be eligible. However, no work in the new construction building would be eligible. Demolitions are not included. Any fines that you would incur, obviously not included. And then we do not cover the installation of any new combustion-based equipment, even if that equipment is more efficient than the current equipment. And then any costs that were not included in the original project scope, even if they are energy efficiency related, if they were not in the original application, they cannot be included. The grant awards start at $2.5 million for $5 million projects. And then they go for thermal energy networks to 12.5 million, and then all other projects 10 million. And this is 50% so we would cover 50% of the cost for for-profit commercial entities, 60% for institutional and nonprofits, and then there would be a 5% bonus for projects located in overburden or adjacent communities. However, even with the bonus, the above caps do apply. So if you hit the 12.5 or $10 million cap, that the bonus would not be applicable. This is stackable with all other programs, with the exception of NJ-Cool. So we would look at the stacking prior to the other incentives. So if it's a $10 million project and you're getting $2 million from PSNG, we're also matching, doing the match on the initial $10 million. The disbursements are set up through 4 tranches. So the first milestone would be you would receive 20% of the grant award at the signing of the grant agreement, assuming that the 20% was used for the look back period for the engineering and soft work. So as soon as you sign that grant agreement and complete that process, if there is anything to reimburse during the 18-month look back period, you would get that right away. At 1/3 of the construction completion, you would get 1/3 of the remaining funds that are available. And that's determined based on the construction cost and schedule data. And you would have to provide the expenses and receipts for any expenses incurred to date versus the total project costs. Then the second 2/3 reimbursement would be your third, 2/3 construction completion would be your third reimbursement. Same would apply. You'd have to provide all your receipts and all your documentation to show that 2/3 of the work has been completed. And then milestone number 4 would be your final payment. The final payment would come upon construction completion, and then submission of all your paperwork that permits have been closed out, any liens have been removed from the property, any contractor liens, and that there would be a site visit at the end. In addition, there is a site visit at the beginning of the project. So there is 2 site visits that we would do, pre-construction and post-construction. As far as the application process goes, it is an online application, and there's a $1,000 application fee. The application portal will be open again next Thursday at 10 a.m. We will review any applications and conduct a feasibility study, and you'll be notified for any incomplete data that we would need. And at that point, you would have 15 days to provide us that information. If you are eligible and the application moves forward, NJEDA will provide an approval letter with the maximum potential grant amount available for the project, and then you would enter into a grant agreement. Award amounts will not be adjusted after the approval. So whatever the grant amount is for any scope changes that you incur or any cost overruns, those would be on the applicant. If you had not submitted your if not submitted with the applications, you'll have 12 months from the date of the grant agreement to provide a firm proof of funding to cover the balance of the project. We also need to see that there is a 10% contingency. So what we'll need to see is, the remainder of the funding that's not being covered by grants, as well as 10% contingency is available to you. We'll then review that proof of funding, and it would go through our underwriting process. You'll then have 12 months, from the time of the application, you would have 12 months to do this. And then project construction must commence on site within 12 months from the grant agreement. So the application must demonstrate that the permits or applications are pending with the relevant building authorities or that construction was started. Project construction cannot commence without step 4 being completed. And then the applicant will have 3 years from the project construction commencement to complete the project. We can make some exceptions for extenuating circumstances as far as extensions, but they are very limited at NJEDA's discretion. These are the documents we will need for the application. So we'll need to see from building owners some sort of proof of building ownership. That would be the deed, property tax statement, or mortgage statement. For tenants, we would need to see building owner's permission. Again, there is a form online available for you for that, for them to sign off on, as well as your lease agreement to show that your lease is going to extend at least 1 year past the construction period. We'll also need to see the building operating hours and occupancy for the last 12 months and the energy usage data for the last 12 months. This is similar to what's in Energy Star, so your engineer should have this information pretty readily available. We'll also need to see proof of your building occupancy class. So that would be in the form of certificate of occupancy or any other government, form that shows that the class of the building does comply with our program. If you have the project design drawings, we'd like to see those as well at that time. And we will need a schedule and a budget. Templates have been provided for this on the website. We'll also need photos and information about the existing building conditions and systems. And we'll also need to see a calculation from a qualified third-party professional to show that we are granting no more than $250 in grant funds for every 1 ton of CO2 that's emitted during the project's useful life. We'll also want to see your quotes and cost estimates for the soft costs, public work record, contractors, labor and materials, and any other equipment procured by the applicant. Again, the soft commitment can come during the application process. So during the application, we're going to want to see that it doesn't have to be firm funding, but that funding is available, that there has been some thought going into where the funding is coming for the remainder of the project, as well as the 10% contingency. If only the soft commitment is provided at the time of the application, then you would have 12 months to provide us the firm funding and start construction. Post-application, this is what we would require, and that is a tax clearance certificate that has to be dated no older than 180 days. There will be a notice that will, for affirmative action prevailing wage, there will be a meeting prior to starting construction, just to go over this with all your contractors. We'll need funding in place to cover the balance of the project cost again, plus the 10%. If that was not provided, with the application, we'll need to see the firm commitment at this point. And then current certificate of insurance naming the EDA. This includes general liability, umbrella excess liability, workman's compensation, and commercial property or builder's risk insurance. This will be all in the grant agreement, which will be posted to the website within the next week or two once it's finalized. Required during the project execution. So there is the 3 tranches where you would get the payments. If at any point from the application to the next payment, more than 1 year surpasses, we would need to see an annual progress report. If you sign the grant agreement and then you put in for the 1/3 payment 9 months, we do not need that annual progress report. But if after 9 months you're not requesting additional funds and you're not through 2/3 construction within a year, then we would need to see a progress report. But those progress reports get overridden by, a submission for reimbursement. The request for reimbursement would be, as you progress, so 1/3, 2/3, and final construction. And we'd also need you to maintain the current insurance and unexpired tax clearance certificates. Once the project is completed, we would need the project completion report, which will basically be your final request for funding, and there will be a site visit. And then a year later, we'll also need the 12 months post-construction utility bills, energy construction, and building occupancy, just to compare that against the baseline from the beginning of this project. If you have any questions, this is how you can reach out to us. The general email is retrofit@njeda.gov. You can reach out to me directly at andres.garcia@nje.gov. And our website is njeda.gov/retrofit. And most of the documents are uploaded there, as well as frequently asked questions, and all the paperwork that would be needed. And now I'll open the floor to any questions. We have a few here. Just looking at the question. Do you have any
Hello,
hands
can you
up?
hear me?
Yep. Yep. Do you have any hands up here? Or?
Yes, Michelet.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing such a wonderful presentation. I know you had mentioned that if you are currently with NJ Cool, and you said it so fast, I didn't quite get it. Can this merge with NJ Cool, or if you're with NJ Cool, you cannot be part of this
This
program?
NJ Cool is the one program that we do not allow stacking with. This is kind of a bigger version of NJ Cool in some respects. So we just don't want that duplication of benefits there. There's a lot of overlap between the programs. So
Okay.
it is stackable with everything except NJ Cool.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
And just to note, if you've already received NJ Cool funding for one project, but you have a different project that hasn't received NJ Cool funding, you can apply to retrofit NJ for that other project.
Correct.
Scott.
Hi, this is Scott Kessler from the Port Authority. I asked this question in the Q&A, but I'm still a little confused. It seems like the cap is per project / EIN. So an entity like us, we have one EIN, but we are interested in multiple projects. Is the 12.5 or $10 million cap, is that a per project cap, or is that a per organization cap?
It is per organization. However, the reason it's per project per EIN is if you have one organization who has two $5 million projects, that would be eligible. However, each organization is capped at 10 million, and the projects overall are capped at 10 million.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have some questions here that are, most of these have been answered. Do we have any more hands up, or should I go through the questions?
No, there are
here?
no hands up at this time.
Okay, there's a question here. Are any rules on how funding will be dispersed if the project is owned by a third party project developer? So all the project has to be owned by, either the tenant or the landlord. So if you're looking like a power purchase agreement or something like that, where a solar installer is, doing the installation and you are, looking to fund that, that would not be eligible because the solar developer is paying for that. So it does have to be paid for by the applicant. You wouldn't be able to do like any sort of power purchase agreement. I hope that answers the question. I think that's where that was kind of heading.
Andy, there's also a question about the milestone-based disbursements. If you could go back to that slide, which
Yep.
covers that.
Nope. Went the wrong way.
And to answer the second part of that question, yes, there's flexibility for projects with longer design phases. We do have an 18-month pre-application look-back period. If you had any design engineering costs that you incurred during that phase before the application, they would be eligible costs, as well as any design engineering costs after application, up to a cap of 20% maximum of costs being allowed as soft costs. So there is flexibility for that. And the slide here covers the not that
Oh,
one.
sorry, it's the disbursement. Yep, sorry, that's the wrong one. I missed it. Okay, here we go. This is the disbursement. So yeah, the up to 20% is available upon grant signing, and that again would be for any look back during the 18-month period for the soft cost for the engineering design. And then at 1/3 construction, you would then be eligible for 1/3 of the remaining funds. At 2/3 construction, you would be eligible for an additional third of the remaining funds. And then upon project completion, you would get the final third of the remaining funds. So this is all reimbursement based. We need to see the work was done, and then you get reimbursed on that work.
And related to this is another question asking how EDA will verify these costs and documentation for reimbursement. There will be a reimbursement form that you would submit, and that would include invoices, receipts, pay records, as well as if, for example, you have project design drawings and outcomes of that work, you could also attach that as proof of the costs having been incurred. And then once we receive that reimbursement package from you, we would process your invoice and pay out for those costs.
We do have a few additional hands up.
Okay.
Dina?
Yes, thank you. I just have a quick question about the grant calculation. I know you mentioned that you need to verify that at least 1 metric ton of greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced for every $250 in requested grant amount. Is there any additional link or resource or guide for calculation of grant, or is that the only guideline there?
So there is an emissions guidance, emissions calculation guidance on the website. It was just posted within the last couple of days. So you would see how we're going to be looking at, it kind of gives a general outline of what we're looking for in preparation of the reports.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I am going to put a link to that emissions calculation guidance in the chat, so you can access it from that link, or go to our website, njeda.gov/retrofit, and look at it there.
Great. Thank you. We have any other hands up, or
Yes.
should I go? Okay.
Oh, a second. Oh, Abby took her hand down. Okay. They put their hand down, so maybe their question was answered.
Okay.
We have another hand here. John? John, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. My question is similar to what was in the chat about while new combustion systems are not eligible on a cost basis, but energy efficiency upgrades to existing systems can be counted towards the CO2 reductions. Is it possible that solar PPAs could work the same way while there's not a cost benefit, but the actual carbon aspect of it could be utilized?
Yeah, it would have to be part of the scope. So unfortunately, yeah, because it's not part of the scope of the project, we wouldn't be able to count it.
Cannot. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then I see a question here. I'm not sure if there's another hand up, but I'll just address this one. Can a project be split into multiple phases to add up to 5 million? The minimum application submission has to be $5 million. So it would have to be submitted all as one application. Would have to be a $5 million project. You do have 3 years to complete it. So, I mean, there's some time for spacing there, but it would have to be one application.
There's also a note in the chat about a pre-approved list. I'm not sure what that is referring to. If you're on the call, could you clarify a bit more?
Yeah, that may have been, in connection to something I was saying at the time because it looked pretty early.
I think that was in relation to third-party verification.
Got it. Yeah, there isn't a pre-approved list or
Yeah.
any recommendation that we're providing for a third-party verification.
Yeah, there is a general list of, the professionals we would consider, but we don't have a list of specific vendors or anything like that. Just, who we would consider capable of making those judgments.
And then there's another question about, is there any link or resource on incentive calculation guidelines? We don't have any specific link or resource for that. But as mentioned, the grant program is stackable up to 100% of the eligible project costs with other federal, state, and utility incentives other than the NJEDA's NJ-Cool program.
And then there's a question here. How do you calculate carbon reduction from battery energy storage? There is no assumption on that. That is in the guidance document, which you can find online. That is up to the engineer to determine how exactly the battery is going to be used. So we're going to look at that for, just that it's a reasonable use of the battery because they can be used in so many different ways. We've kind of need to see how it's going to be used. Is it going to be used for peak shaving? Is it going to be used, more for backup? Is it going to be used, the peak shaving 3 days a year? Is it going to be used daily? So we need to see how that's going to be used, and that it's a reasonable assumption and reasonable use of the battery storage. We're not making any assumptions there. This can be stacked with CPACE. That is one of the questions there. Obviously that would be a separate application with the CPACE department. Again, there's a question, are PPAs eligible? PPAs are not eligible because the cost is incurred by the third party because the solar developer is the one paying it. They're not eligible.
There's a question about if during engineering and design changes are suggested to scope, how will that affect application? If there are specific changes, like for example, your solar system is changing from one size to another, that's fine. But just noting that once your award is approved by the EDA based on the project budget estimate that you submitted, we cannot subsequently modify or shift the grant funding amount. So that's just a flag, and the applicant would need to account for any potential project changes, and that's why there is a 10% project contingency requirement in case there is any cost overrun. You would be able to account for that as the applicant.
I have another question here. Does cogen expansion project adding a building to a loop qualify? What phase of the project does it need to be to qualify? Is design too late? Design is not too late. Design is eligible during the 18-month look back period. So as long as it's only the design that has been completed, that's fine. Once any construction has been started or any contract signed or anything like that, then we consider that construction started. Then it would not be eligible. But for any soft costs as far as design and engineering, that's fine. As far as cogen project adding to a loop, I mean, we'd have to, I would say, let's talk about that one, one-on-one to see exactly what the project looked like. Again, you would have to have the 3 scopes in general, unless this is considered a thermal energy. Thermal energy is pretty broad. So, but that's definitely something, if you'd like to reach out to me and talk about the project in more detail, I'd be happy to do that. Whose engineer are you referring to for the battery assessment?
Sorry, I just answered that one, AD. If you want to go to the answered section, you should say.
Oh, okay. Yep. No, if it's answered, it's answered.
If the project includes installation of carbon capture technology and existing combustion equipment, can incentive be granted against a DOT reduction? That could potentially fall under energy efficiency. Is that right, Andy?
Uh, yeah, potentially. Again, that's something, let me talk to you, specifically on the project, but yeah.
Yeah, reach out to us directly to describe your project scope, and we can, based on the details of what you're trying to do, we can give you a specific answer to your
Yeah.
question.
Are re-roofs eligible for New Jersey retrofit? Again, let's talk about that specifically. If it's considered enabling work, yes. But again, that's something on specific projects. Let's definitely have a conversation.
Regarding the EIN, workers files only one tax return. That includes hundreds of EINs. So if you were to utilize a different EIN for a different project, you could technically submit two different applications with each having the max cap at 12.5 for thermal energy networks and 10 million for all other projects. All right, I think we've answered any questions in the chat. Are there any hands up?
No, there are no hands up at this time.
Great. Any other questions, please definitely feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. The answer about re-roofing was that if it's enabling work that would be necessary for the proposed energy systems to be installed or operational, then it would be an eligible cost. So if you were installing a solar array and that would require you to upgrade or replace your roof, that would be considered enabling work, which would be an eligible cost.
And I believe, I'm not sure if this just came up again or if it's being asked. If the project includes the installation of carbon capture technology on existing combustion equipment, can the incentive be granted against greenhouse? So if that's considered energy efficiency, we can allow energy efficiency and greenhouse reduction on fossil fuel. We cannot allow the installation of new fossil fuel. So if you are making an existing fossil fuel system that's going to remain more efficient, that does fall within the scope. We just cannot reimburse for, a more efficient, going from an 80% efficient boiler to a 90%, even though it's more efficient, we cannot pay for the boiler. We can pay for work to make the systems more efficient though. So yes. And I think that answers all the questions in the chat again, unless anyone has any more questions.
We do have a hand up.
Okay.
Let's see. Eric? Eric, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, very good. I appreciate that. So I jumped on a little bit late. So if we're looking at three different projects, is there a percentage of savings, emissions saved that each project have to incorporate as part of the overall? Such as if you're looking at a refrigeration project as one and HVAC as another and lighting as another, do they have to have percentages tied to like the overall project savings?
No, they do not. The scopes, we need the three scopes in general, but there is no requirement that each scope fulfill a certain amount of the CO2 requirement. It's the project as a whole has a CO2 requirement, and then as long as the three scopes are touched upon, you would be eligible.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. There's a question here. We are on the wait list for NJ Cool program. Are we still able to submit an application under NJ RETROFIT if we haven't been awarded grant dollars? I would believe.
Let's take that one offline and talk directly, Daniel. I think the answer is yes, but let's just double check offline.
Yeah. Do we have any more hands up or questions?
No, there are no hands up at this time.
think if we have no more questions, then that may wrap it up for the day.
Thank you, Andy, for leading us through. I think a few folks asked about Q&A, the recording being posted. So confirming this will be posted on the RetroFit NJ website, which is in the chat. Give us a few days to get it up there, but expect applications to launch next week and the recording will be posted beforehand. So thanks for all your good work, Andy.
Thank you.